How was the New Testament created? How was it assembled, put together? I'm just going over content that I wrote down and how the Bible was made and how you should read it, which is really a summary of a lot of other studying that other people wrote. But this is a small book. Um, and so I'm just going over the content here in these videos. So let's talk about the New Testament. First of all, when I say the word New Testament, or the words New Testament, what does that mean? New Testament is a compilation of books. How many books? So there's an easy way to remember how many books are in the New Testament. If you take the word New and Testament, count the numbers, N-E-W, 3 in the Testament is 9, and you multiply 3 times 9. How many do we get? I'll use my calculator, but I'm pretty sure it's 27. 3 times 9 equals 27. So there's 27 books in the New Testament. Boom. If you don't believe me, look at my calculator. Or open up your Bible and count. So 27 books in the New Testament. We can generally group these books into 3 different styles, or kind of 3 different chunks. The first one is basically the story of Jesus and his followers. So these are the first 5 books in the Bible, or in the New Testament, excuse me: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts. The first 4 are called Gospels. They are literally just a gospel account, a life account of Jesus' life. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, John are all about Jesus, his ministry, and then Acts is basically what happened to the church after Jesus left the earth. Matthew, Mark, Luke, the third gospel, Luke, wrote Luke. It's an author titled Gospel, so the Gospel according to Luke. But he also wrote the book of Acts. And so if you count the number of pages or words in the New Testament, Luke is the greatest contributor to the New Testament. He wrote them more than anyone else did. Okay, so we have Gospels and Acts is like the first section. The second section are letters, and these are literal letters that people wrote to other individuals or groups of people. So we have a whole bunch of letters that end up in the New Testament. So we're reading other people's mail, essentially. And then the last book in the Bible it's like Jewish apocalypse writing. So this book is called Revelation. It's good to know that it's written as Jewish apocalypse, which was a common style of writing back in the day. There's also different genres, which we'll get into as we read through my book. But there's one book in the New Testament that's apocalyptic writing, and that's Revelations. And that's why if you read it, you're kind of like, this is a little weird and different than all the rest of the books, because the style is different. So that's kind of what the New Testament is. How was it made and formed? Well, people started, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John started recording this account of Jesus' life. So those are the Gospels. Luke was commissioned. He was kind of paid by a guy to do research on who Jesus was and then what happened afterwards. So that's where the book of Acts comes from. Then the letters are different disciples and apostles writing different groups of people and giving them accounts of what's going on, how to live out the faith of following Jesus, answering their questions. And so that's where all these letters come from. And so these things start being circulated because, let's say the Apostle Paul writes a letter to the church in Ephesus. Well, there might be other people who want to hear that, so that letter would get passed around and copied, and other people hear about this, and that started accompanying the Old Testament scrolls. So we have the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, and people are learning about this new guy Jesus and what, how he fulfills all these prophecies in the Old Testament. And so they're collecting the scrolls of the Old Testament along with these new writings that eventually turn up or get formalized as the New Testament. So all these writings are together, and that's pretty much how the early church formed and grew, and how they founded their theology. Their theological books were essentially the New Testament books in addition to the Old Testament. Well, something really interesting happened in between 284 and 305 AD. So this is like basically 300 years after Christ. The church is growing, his followers are growing, they're gathering together, they're learning, and there's a Roman emperor named Diocletian who ruled from 284 to 305. Diocletian started persecuting the church, so he started killing Christians basically, and he would gather their scrolls, these sacred writings, these collections of the Old Testament and the letters and Gospels and this Revelation book, and he started burning them. So the scriptures became more and more rare, which made them more and more valuable. And so there was a big intention put behind making more copies of the scriptures. And it was during this time that some copying centers were made, and people were just dedicating their lives to preserving and collecting all 39 books of the Old Testament with these other 27 New Testament writings. And so it's around the year 300 when these copying centers, instead of having 66 different scrolls, they would have one scroll with 66 books written in it. And that's kind of the earliest time in history where we get something like this that we have that's common today, one collection of all 66 writings. So when you ask the question, like, when was the first Bible made? Well, the books of the Bible were over a span of like 1,500 years created, but when they were really first collected in one single writing around 300 AD, in how we would think of it, like just one thing versus having a library of 66 books. So that happens around 300. And so, a lot of people ask about the canonization, and we'll talk about that. But the New Testament was formed much more organically or naturally than the Old Testament was. Let me give you a couple other key landmarks for the New Testament and how this thing evolved and progressed. In the 1380s, John Wycliffe translated the Bible into English by hand. He translated and hand wrote the Bible into English. So that's pretty much when we first see the first English translation of the Bible. Some things happened in the early 1500s that were critical to the development and history of the Bible. In 1516, Erasmus compiled the first scholarly Bible. So think of like a Bible. It's, of course, all the books compiled together, but having scholarly notes inside of it. So that was a big step in 1516. In the early 1500s, William Tyndale had the Bible translated into English via the printing press. So, and this was illegal to do, and he risked his life and basically killed because of this movement, but he was translating the Bible into English and printing it on a massive scale instead of just one copy that was handwritten. And of course, we have that today, but that was a big step in the 1500s. Then we have something else that happens in kind of late 1500s, but the British Empire is going around the world. They're kind of not conquering the world like Alexander the Great did, being world powers, but they do occupy several different lands. And as they're doing this, they start exploring. They start digging up old cities, and this is new in human history. It's pretty much the birth of archaeology, and so they start unearthing stuff that's been buried for thousands of years. And a part of this process is they're finding copies of scriptures that got buried for whatever reasons. If people groups were conquered, or if just over time, people moved away from a city, basically a place of living, that got covered up and forgotten about. And in this archaeology is when humanity, the British specifically, starts finding these ancient copies of spiritual writings that we know as now as the Old Testament and even the New Testament. And so, just like we talked about some Old Testament manuscripts, we start finding New Testament manuscripts that have been preserved. And again, we get to compare them to what we have today, and sure enough, super accurate, super preserved across time. There are some there in the New Testament. There are some discrepancies also from the old manuscripts to what we have today. But again, if you have a study Bible, every one of these discrepancies is notated, and there's usually some sort of explanation. And among all of them, there's no change in actual meaning. Saying like there's no like significant facts that are altered. It's just like little different things. One example I'll give you is um, in the Lord's Prayer from the King James version into the like New International Version. There's some changes there because the Catholics, when they would recite the Lord's Prayer, they would add a line, which is "For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever, Amen." That's in the King James Bible, but it's not in the NIV. Why? Well, it wasn't in the old manuscripts. That line wasn't written in there. But somewhere along the way, when the Catholics would recite the Lord's Prayer, they would add that line to the end of it. It's a nice closer for that prayer. And at some point, when the guy's copying, was like, oh wait, there's this little line that's not here, and so he added it in, and now we know that probably wasn't a part of the original manuscript, but it made it in there at some point, and so some versions of the Bible have it, some don't. It doesn't change any meaning, and again, that's like one little line out of the whole 27 books. But we see those, and they are notated because I don't think anyone's trying to hide behind any of those small discrepancies. They're there. We acknowledge them, but we acknowledge them. So we simply take note of the fact there's no change meaning. What we have as the New Testament is very, very accurate. So that's kind of like a brief summary of how the New Testament was put together and then combined with the Old Testament to become the Bible. So what I'll talk about in the next video is translations. Why are there so many stinking translations in the English language of the Bible? Good question. A lot of people get worked up about this. I don't think we need to, but we will tackle it in our next video. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys. Thanks for watching. God bless.